and Research Society, founded by the President Dr. Sudhir Nikam sir and the Secretary Dr. Madhavi Nikam madam. Heartily welcome today's eminent speaker, Professor Nibir Ghosh sir, and all the participants from various states across India who have registered for this 2 days national webinar, Contemporary Reflections on Critical Theories and Aesthetics. Today is the second day of the webinar. Here, we wish to announce that due to certain unavoidable circumstances, the other speaker, Professor Anshuman Khanna sir, could not be available for the deliberation. So we are postponing his speech. But assure you, very soon we will upload the recorded video on our Higher Education and Research Society's YouTube channel. Dear friends, without taking much time, let's proceed further. I am honored and privileged to introduce our today's eminent and stalwart speaker for day. We have with us Professor Nibir K. Ghosh sir, who is UGC Emeritus Professor, Department of English Studies and Research, Agra College. He is DLED. Sir has been Senior Fulbright Fellow at the University of Washington, Seattle, USA during 2003 and 4. He is the author of 14 widely acclaimed books that have been acquired by the British Museum Library and the US Library of Congress. To name quite a few here, Beyond Boundaries, Reflections of Indian and US Scholars, published in 2007. Multicultural America, Conversations with Contemporary Authors, 2005. Calculus of Power, Modern American Political Novel, in 1997. His most recent works include Gandhi and His Soul Force Mission in 2013. Rabindranath Tagore, The Living Presence, 2011. Shaping Minds, Multicultural Literature, W.H. Auden, Therapeutic Fountain, W.H. Auden, sorry, Erasing Barricades, Women in Indian Literature in 2010, Perspectives on Legends of American Theatre in 2009. He has published a monograph on August Wilson's The Piano Lesson. Sir has edited two poetry anthologies also. First one, Poetic Miscellany, and the second one, Spectrum of Poetic Sensibility. Sir is an eminent scholar and critic of American, British, and post-colonial literatures. Sir has published over 180 articles and scholarly essays on various political, socio-cultural, and feminist issues in prestigious national and international journals. He has designed lessons on Virginia Woolf, Francis Bacon, and Charles Lamb for the IGNOU, that is Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. His essay, From the City of the Taj to Bill Gates' Town, The Fulbright Experience, is on display in Amazon. It is significant that his essay entitled The Spiritual Nationalism of Sri Aurobindo is prescribed in the foundation course of the universities and colleges of Madhya Pradesh. He is on the review panel of MELUS, that is the journal Multi-Ethnic Literature of the United States, published by the University of Connecticut, Glenbrook, USA, and the African American Review, the quarterly international journal on Black American literature and culture of the modern language, which is published by the Johns Hopkins University Press, Baltimore, Maryland. During 1992-96, Sir was the executive member of the board of directors for the American Studies Research Center in Hyderabad. He has given extension lectures and keynote addresses at many universities and campuses in India and abroad as well. He was anchor of the National University Student Skills Development Program under the aegis of TIS, that is Tata Institute of Social Sciences, from 2013 to 2016. Sir is an associate of Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Shimla. Sir is the chief editor of the Remarkings, an international biannual journal of research in English that is in its 19th year of publication. With this exhaustive list of credentials, I now request Dr. Ghosh sir to proceed for the talk on rethinking relevance of literary theories, assumptions, and challenges. I once again welcome you, sir, to this virtual floor for the deliberation. We are eager to listen to you. Over to you, Ghosh sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta. First of all, I bring greetings from the city of the Taj to Dr. Sudhir Nikam, Madhavi Nikam, all the participants from various parts of the country, all researchers, academicians, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is certainly a matter of great pleasure for me to speak for a forum created by my very young friend Sudhir and his wife Madhavi. And when Dr. Sudhir called me up and asked me about participating in this webinar, I remember the wonderful evening I spent at their home years ago, and I said, okay, let me just say yes, and here I am. Well, friends, my topic as announced by Dr. Sangeeta, rethinking relevance of literary theories, assumptions, and challenges. There are several things which I want to tell you, but before I do that, I'm supposed to be with you all for 60 minutes. So at the very outset, I would like to share with you a statement uttered by Stephen Leacock. He said, most people tire of a lecture in 10 minutes. Clever people can do it in 5. Sensible people never go to lectures at all. This is Stephen Leacock. And those who actually have broached the courage of being with me for 60 minutes, I welcome them most heartily. Friends, literary criticism is something which I've really loved, enjoyed as a student, as a teacher, as a scholar, as a critic, as a writer, and as a reader. But rather than give you a capsule for literary theory as such, I would be emphasizing on the rethinking part. And what I'm going to share with you is a collage of impressions I've gathered over the years. We all are very particularly excited when we talk about literary theories. But I would like to share with you, before I start dwelling on the different aspects of the topic, an editorial that I wrote in the year 2006 for Remarkings. And as a chief editor, it is the only editorial or the interview that I publish in Remarkings. Otherwise, I don't publish my own work in Remarkings in any other form. This editorial I would like to share with you for the simple reason that there are many youngsters who are young research scholars, have just joined the profession, and they have a very long innings to go. So I would be focusing, and I was, when Dr. Sudhir told me that there would be 4,000 plus participants, I felt very happy because I thought I've never had the chance to go to a Kumbh Mela. So maybe this would be a wonderful opportunity to see an academic Kumbh Mela. But even if 4 out of 4,000 get the impression that I'm trying to convey, I will consider myself very fortunate that I became a part of this webinar. Now, a few minutes, I would beg of you to share my editorial. If peradventure, reader, it has been thy lot to find yourself trapped in the labyrinths of contemporary academia, where literary knights, armed with a lethal arsenal of literary theories, joust with each other and confound the bewildered onlooker, you needn't recede into the secluded confines of despair or depression. If you felt intimidated by men and women talking of Bakhtin, Barthes, Foucault, Derrida, and others in conference and seminar rooms, or if you have tried in vain to comprehend critical jargons like post-structuralism, post-colonialism, diasporization, postmodernism, all you need to do is learn the secret mantra that can inspire you to exchange a lance or two with some of these gallant knights. That mantra is obscurity. A firm grounding in obscurity of thought and language can take you to higher altitudes of career advancement and fetch you huge scores in the government brand of API. Remember, posture can be as important as politics when it comes to the intelligentsia. In other words, it may be less important whether or not you like postmodernism than whether or not you can speak and write postmodernism. First and foremost, you must realize the inefficacy of using plainly expressed language. If you say speak in simple language, if you write in simple language, then you will not qualify to be in that stardom of academia. What should you do? It sounds too realist, modernist, and obvious. Postmodern language requires the use of play, parody, and indeterminacy as critical techniques to point this out. Often this is quite a difficult requirement, so obscurity is a well-acknowledged substitute. For example, let us imagine you want to say something like, we should listen to the views of people outside of Indian society in order to learn about the cultural biases that affect us. Now, this is a simple statement. But if you write this, nobody will give you any importance. So how do you write? This is honest but dull and somehow doesn't fit into the postmodern paradigm. Instead of the word views, you would do well to use voices, or better, vocalities, or even better, multivocalities. Add an adjective like intertextual and you are covered. People outside is too plain. How about post-colonial others? To speak postmodern with expertise, all you need is switch gears from plain clarity to complex obscurity so that you are able to mediate your identities. Also, remember, don't hesitate to use as many suffixes, prefixes, hyphens, slashes, underlinings, and anything else you can think of. In order to make your presentation a grand success, just throw in a few names whose work everyone will agree is important, but nobody has the time or the inclination to read. Be careful. Don't you tread on familiar and indigenous grounds. Adopt the Western viewpoint. For the terminology used by European or American theorists are best when you are hunting for difficult material to navigate your way through postmodern, post-colonial spaces. Well, friends, thank you for listening to this part of the editorial. which raises some very serious questions. And you'll be surprised to know that when I shared this editorial with people even in Harvard, University of Washington, and other places, even the greatest proponents of theory, they said that it needed a lot of guts to say all those things. So that is what is the first lesson that I want to share with my young participants, that have the guts to say what you feel. I'll now move to some of the issues which I have in mind. Most of you may have heard the title Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. I'm going to begin with one conversation that takes place in that novel. In that novel, Alice asks the Cheshire cat, who is seated on a tree, "What road do I take?" And the cat answered, "Where do you want to go?" Alice replied, "I don't know." Then said the cat, "It really doesn't matter, does it?" So basic idea when you're discussing literary theories or anything else for that matter, before choosing the road, you must have the focus on your goal, where you want, what you want to do. My editorial may have given you the idea that I'm against theory. That would be basically wrong, because I began with the assumption that I've loved teaching theory as much as I've loved teaching anything else. But why these changes come? What I'm trying to emphasize, and what I have emphasized in that editorial, it is not an exceptional way to decide that, it is my personal opinion and I don't like all these jargons. I'm basically, and all of you who are actually going to be teachers, unless, because using jargons is basically a sign of hypocrisy, a sign of the fact that you are not aware of what you are talking about. As after writing this editorial, when I heard the comments from most of the critics and writers from different countries, I actually thought that I must go in for some research in this to find an endorsement for what I was trying to convey in a lighter vein. One book I'm naming, it is Terry Eagleton is the author. The name of the book is Literary Theory and Introduction. Now see what Terry Eagleton has to say. This book was first published in 1983, and it was his assumption in writing that book, wherein he states, there are some who complain that literary theory is impossibly esoteric, arcane, elitist, somewhat akin to nuclear physics. And he ascertained that many of the readers of literary theory, they realized that literary theory is an intervention between the reader and the work he is reading. This is the preface to the first edition, what he says in the second edition. And what is his effort in writing literary theory is to make modern literary theory intelligible and attractive to as wide a readership as possible. My humble submission to all the youngsters who will take up literary theories, the act of teaching literary theories, one challenge before you is to find out how can you make modern literary theory intelligible and attractive to your students. If you want to simply impress them and say that, oh, literary theory is something you'll never understand, it's very difficult. You know, I took 20 years to learn literary theory. I'll be taking up these issues again. The basic assumption is, how do we teach literary theory to our students? Let me make it very clear. Literary theory is prescribed in all the universities. How you pass that and get the highest marks in the literary theory paper, all Bazaro notes costing about 150 rupees or so will get you 90% marks. But I'm not talking about marks. I'm talking about, do I need literary theory? When I give the Alice in Wonderland analogy, if my goal is clear, and in that goal, literary theory becomes important, there is absolutely no harm in reading, understanding on your own, and then trying to explain it to some. Because I have seen, and I have had the opportunity of meeting a critic like Noam Chomsky, and I also wasn't scared to tell him that why is literary theory so complex and arcane. And I believe the way some of the academicians, they try to present the idea of literary theory, it would look to a beginner or even to a seasoned academic that it is, it is as difficult as explaining the symptoms of COVID-19. So you have to be on your guard. Harold Bloom, and that is what it happens, rather than coming to the base and understanding what literary theory is, let us get rid of the mental block where we are very prone to using terminologies: post-structuralism, post-colonialism, post-Marxism, post-feminism, and now post-truth, and post, just to catch phrases and techniques here and there. And what I feel is, rather than make it as complex as understanding the symptoms and diagnosis and treatment of COVID-19, let us try and see how we can make and what actually makes literary theory interesting, makes literary theory necessary. Many of you may have heard the name of Harold Bloom. One of the terms that he has used is anxiety of influence. So why do we go and talk about jargons? Why do we start thinking that the more complex we make a subject, the more learned we are? And that reminds me of Harold Bloom's anxiety of influence, and see what he says. Only strong poets can overcome this anxiety of influence. Lesser lights become derivative flatterers and never achieve poetic immortality for themselves. So don't become derivative flatterers. Now I'll tell you what happened. When we were students, we had prescribed in our course History and Principles of Literary Criticism. and from Aristotle down to T.S. Eliot, everyone read. I personally feel that it was such a great experience. I had been a science student. I switched over to the study of literature just because of the passion that I had for the subject. But I feel that had I not gone through this paper very carefully with interest, maybe it would not have given me the insights that theories can give you into understanding the work of literature. Now, what happens? After the Second World War, when terms like nihilism, terms like Nadaism, terms like absurd cropped up, this is where the conclusion was God is dead, the author is dead, the novel is dead, only you and me are alive. So all this idea of deadness, it shifted the emphasis from reading and enjoying literature to making literature and into converting literary theory into some apps for studying literature. And that is one of the historical reasons. Because you see, these literary theories that we are talking about, they are on their own. I think everyone has a wonderful message to convey. But I must ask myself, if I read a work of art, do I need to read Foucault? Do I need to read Schopenhauer? Do I need to read anyone for that matter? It is my decision. If my reading that work takes me to the theory, fine. But if I bring a theory and say, okay, now listen, Mark Twain, I'm going to use Bakhtin's carnival idea and see, that, and you know what is going to be the net result. I'm going to give you some certain examples which have come to me in terms of, and actually what happened. If you look at the history of literary criticism, right from Aristotle to Wordsworth and T.S. Eliot and I.A. Richards too, you will see that they were basically some people who were interested in literature, in humanism, in studying what man and what creativity meant. But then what happened? The linguists, the structuralists, they came one by one, entered the market, they mastered themselves in it, found a lovely place like USA, land of opportunity and dreams. They went and settled down in different universities, and so the literary theory school came into being. It was like a huge mall selling all the branded literary, and it is up to you whether you are, when you go to a mall, you are attracted by the glitter of the things displayed, or are you sure of what you came to buy there, buy and just get up. I'm going to give you an example how literary theory can be fallacious. The British came and ruled us. We all know what experiences we had through writers and people and everyone, leaders. But then, when you think of, if you are trying to write about the rule of the Britishers, then you don't have any right to give your own opinion. Post-colonialism comes into it. And then if it is post-colonialism, you have to read Occident, and East becomes Orient. West is Occident, East is Orient. And we quote Kipling. East is East, and the West is West, and never the twain shall meet. You know, when I had gone to US for the Fulbright, I was writing this essay, which I mentioned is had been on the Amazon Shorts, and I decided to do some research on this line of Kipling, who is supposed to be a great imperialist. And in doing that research, I realized that this line, which every Indian knows by heart and which distinguishes or demarcates the border between the East and West, that it will never meet. This is a conclusion that everyone has reached. I tried to find out why did Kipling have to make such a statement. And then I realized that this is a line which occurs in a poem called Ballad of the East and West, written in 1892 by Rudyard Kipling. So we all say East is East and the West is West and never the twain shall meet. But this line is a part of the refrain used in the poem. And it is a poem which is located in Afghanistan, where it is a border dispute is there. And there is a colonel and the character who are daggers drawn, they are enemies, they want to kill each other. But at the end, towards the end of the poem, the Britisher is so impressed by the courage and daring of the Indian that he feels a deep sense of respect for him. And then you see what Kipling writes in that poem. We say East is East and the West is West and never the twain shall meet. And at the end of the refrain, 2 lines he says, but there is neither East nor West, border, nor breed, nor birth, when 2 strong men stand face to face, though they come from the ends of the earth. So if East is East and West is West, and they are both strong, then they will have to come and be together out of mutual respect for one another. Have you seen this in any literary theory making this statement? So this is the effort that you have to make, not to take anything for granted, but just to see whether it is the truth, whether it gives you some idea. And I feel, that it was this particular awareness of Kipling that made me write a big tribute for him during his 150th birth anniversary. Now, another example which I would like to give you is there in we all are talking about environment today. We are all, eco-criticism is the buzzword. You can't talk of environment problem, eco-criticism is the buzzword. How does eco-criticism come into being? It comes out of the eco-criticism readers, Landmarks in Literary Ecology by Cheryl Clotfelty and Harold Fromm, published in 1996. And in the introduction to that book, you are informed that it was William Ruckert who gave us this term, eco-criticism, in 1978 in a book called Literature and Ecology. I got an opportunity to deliver a keynote address on the environment, nature, and all that. Eco-criticism was a part of the theme. My first line was, do you think that human beings have been so stupid that they had to wait till 1978 from the Greek times to know what eco-criticism is? I said, have you heard about a book called Social Contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, published in 1762? The first line of which opens with, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. And at the end of the book, he says that man has broken all relationships with nature, and only going back to nature is the way out. And you see, if you go to Rousseau's book, and you wonder that why in 2015 there was a Paris conclave on global warming, because what the points that had been raised by Rousseau and others, Wordsworth, for example, as a poet, and you see that this is how the whole thing evolves. And but if you have to talk about eco-criticism, you don't know, you have not heard about the name of Rousseau, but you have heard the name of eco-critical criticism reader, and in 1996 latest. So avoid all these pitfalls. Then I mentioned in that talk of mine, the keynote, why don't you talk of the Chipko movement? Why don't you talk about the Epico movement? Why don't you talk about the Greenpeace revolution? Have you heard the name of Wangari Maathai of Kenya, the Nobel laureate, who got all the support from the people because she fought against the government to stop a mall being created in place of a forest land, and she succeeded in it. So this is another point that I'm trying to bring forth to the researchers. One small example I would like to give. You have heard about Mahashweta Devi? I can assure you that many of the English teachers teaching in Indian universities, they would not have heard of Mahashweta Devi if they were not made to be aware of the existence of Gayatri Spivak Chakravarti. Because Gayatri Spivak Chakravarti came and told you and gave you a question. Can the subaltern speak? The subaltern was there even before the civilization properly came into being. But you have to wait for one statement. Can the subaltern speak? I'm quoting Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. In that translation of Draupadi, she is right. You know what she says? We are not aware of this. My approach to the story has been influenced by deconstructive practice. I clearly share an unease that would declare avant-garde theories of interpretation too elitist to cope with revolutionary feminist material. She herself has accepted in that preface that this deconstruction is too elitist to make any sense to an ordinary reader. And when I look at a story like Draupadi, I don't wonder at whether the subaltern can speak or not. What I can visualize in my mind are two different sets. I go to the Draupadi of Mahabharata, who, when she is dragged into that court of those gamblers, she appeals to Lord Krishna and to be clothed so that she can save herself from the shame that she is being subjected to. I see it as a very important kind of a statement made by Mahashweta Devi, who's Draupadi. She does not pray to Lord Krishna. She challenged the Sena Nayak, goes naked in front of him and says, if you are a man, touch me. And she spits on his face. Do you see the revolution? Now we talk about from elitism. Let me go back to giving you some examples of showing that how much theory can be important. We have read about Aristotle's poetics. Aristotle's poetics were based on the plays of Sophocles, Aeschylus, and others. And when you read these plays, what fantastic works they are, whether it is Oedipus Rex or Antigone or any work by Aeschylus. Now, when you look at the theory that Aristotle has made, you come to know, and he makes an announcement that a tragic hero has to be a person of renown. If he is not a noble person of renown, a king, a prince, or a very important person in the citizenry, then you cannot write a tragedy. We come down to Shakespeare and we make changes. We say, okay, there is no hamartia in Shakespearean heroes, there is tragic flaw. Then we come down again, but we continue to revel in the idea that a tragedy cannot be written about a common man. Then I feel that I look at a poem like Gray's Elegy written in a country churchyard, which most of you may be aware of. And there are some stanzas which I want to share with you. The opening of the poem, first stanza, the curfew tolls the knell of parting day, the lowing herd winds slowly over the lea, the ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me. And another stanza, let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure, nor grandeur hear with a disdainful smile the short and simple annals of Aristotle's theory. And Gray's two stanzas, it brings a revolution. It changes the theory upside down. And immediately within 25, 30 years of what Gray writes, comes Wordsworth with his literary theory saying that preface to the lyrical ballads, where he says that it is the common man I wish to celebrate. And whether it is, and if you come down to the modern thing. You look at a book like Look Back in Anger. You look at a book like Birthday Party. You take a look at a book like Ibsen's Doll's House, and you see that a tragedy can be written about a person who is common, who's like us, who's like Willie Loman, who is ready to sacrifice everything. And you find that he's as great a tragic hero. And you see, and that is what literary criticism should do. We read a lot of Shakespeare. We are all fond of Shakespeare. We celebrate 400 years of his birth and everything. But look at one statement that Dr. Samuel Johnson makes. He begins his preface to Shakespeare with one line. And that is, you can say, the touchstone of testing whether literature is good or bad, lasting or impermanent. And the line he says is, nothing pleases long and pleases many, but the just representation of general nature. So everything that lasts, everything is great literature, is something that pleases, makes apparent the just representation. By just, I mean that the most authentic representation of general nature. You come down to Wordsworth's preface to the lyrical ballads, and he makes a statement. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotions recollected in tranquility. And then you start debating, well, how can emotions be recollected in tranquility? And then you think, oh, he was probably confused about things. But look at the poem, Daffodils. In one of the stanzas, he says, for oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Take the statement and take the poem. So most of when you see those literary criticism, you find that those critics, they were basically practitioners of literature. They were the ones who knew what literature was. And they were telling you, they were giving you the torchlight to say that, okay, look out, take out, you're reading this book and you get this idea. We talk of T.S. Eliot, tradition and individual talent. And I think you can never have a better definition by anyone giving you what tradition means and he makes it very clear that tradition doesn't mean that you are talking of one generation ignoring and talking about and following the same thing is being followed. It is much different. And the example that I would like to give, and he states in his own poem, time past and time future point to one end, which is always present. You look at tradition and individual talent, look at this line. He talks about escape from personality, and you start debating. Well, if you escape from personality, if you're not writing about your own emotions, what is literature going to tell you about? But you see, when he gives the example of Shakespeare, and he makes a statement. Only those who have a personality know what it means to escape. If you don't have a personality, you can't escape. And it is not merely Eliot who's saying it. You look at Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold also, in his poem in praise of Shakespeare, says that he makes it very clear, others abide your question. Others abide our question, thou art free. We ask and ask, thou smilest and art still. So when you go to the Shakespearean plays, you actually know what escape from personality can mean. But in the limited sense of the term, if we don't do this kind of a reading, we will think escape from the personality means don't write about yourself, write about your neighbors, write about all those silly fellows you see around. Don't get into all this model. Okay, now when you look at all these examples that I'm sharing with you, you realize that these kind of critical statements, this kind of wide reading, they give you a large kind of an insight into how you should study, understand, share, teach, and exchange literature. And why do we talk about, now you see, we talk about Marxist theory. Everyone is a great Marxist. Soviet Union disintegrated, but you find Marxists all around you. Now look at, when I talk about why I make the statement. First thing, and I'm not being critical of Marx, what he has given is, Marx had predicted that the dictatorship of the proletariat, if it is created, it will be created in a capitalist culture. But the Russian Revolution was an agrarian revolution. And if you want to understand that what happened to Marxism, why did such a solid book, a man which kept on writing all his life, who would just go in the morning and his friend Engels would bring him out of that library dead at night. Why did his theories did not succeed? Marxism doesn't give you that answer. If you read a book like The God That Failed, where 6 writers from different continents, including Richard Wright, Ignatius Elone, and others, Stephen Spender, and they all, when they write, you will see in a book called The God That Failed. Read those 6 essays and you will know why Marxism failed, why communism failed, why communism never could gain ground. So I'm not against your reading. I'm not, but you have to decide. And this will all depend on your own interest and how you want to make it, how you want to make simple things. Now, when we talk about the discrimination, the marginalization, this is again one term which is very famous. If you talk of African Americanism, marginalization. If you talk about Dalits, it is marginalization. And who do we quote? We quote all the great theorists. And unless you quote those French and American writers, But I feel that if I have to understand marginalization, the clever way that marginalization is inflicted upon us, I don't go and look for, I would like to read all those theories also. I would like to read Du Bois. I would like to read Booker T. Washington. I would like to read Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, and everyone for that matter. But I say that if we look into our own literature, I come across a poem written by Vaharu Sonavne, which I think many of you may be aware of. He has a poem called The Stage. And what does he write in that poem? Very short poem. And be, you must be sort of, you'll fall in love with this poem once you go read this carefully. What he says, we didn't go up to the stage. No one asked us. Actually, only by pointing fingers, they showed us our place. And we sat there. Great, they exclaimed. And they went up on the stage, started narrating us our own sorrows, but our sorrows remained ours, never became theirs. In confusion, we whispered. They tried to listen inside, and then plucking our ears hard, blasted, say sorry, otherwise. This is where you find an expression, and if you read the life history of this gentleman, Vaharu Sonavne, you will see that this poem comes out of his life blood, and this can cause a revolution. And I don't know whether Vaharu Sonavne knows anything about Karl Marx. I don't want to go into. So what I would like to conclude by saying to all the teachers, to all the students of literature, why do we read literature? Why should we read literature? In this, I'm drawn to one statement made by Socrates, who said, an unexamined life is not worth. An unexamined life is not worth living. And how do you examine life? Who am I? What am I? What am I doing? What is my goal? Who are all these people around? What relationship do I have with them? If we don't examine them, we are just mugging up books, passing examinations, getting degrees, becoming professors and vice chancellors and governors and all that. But we are not bringing humanity closer to us. And rather than what I would like to conclude by saying that rather than push our students to absorb density and verbosity, when you want to read something, you read it. Try to understand it. If you don't understand, read it again. Take help from anyone. Discuss that. Keep that in your mind. Let your mind come out with, how do I interpret this? How do I do this? Why can't, if I can't, because basically when you're talking to your student, your purpose, your responsibility is communication. If you are creating a coil of verbosity, you're not communicating. And we must, when we read a book, if we love a book, let us see what questions it tells us about how does it affect me? How will it affect somebody that I talk to somebody about? Do we read a poem book just for the sake of it? And the last thing that I would like to tell you and share with all is, let us apply our reading to our theories rather than applying theories to our reading. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure sharing my experiences with you. And All I can say is that, as I said in the beginning, that even 3 or 4 of you feel that communication requires simplicity. Clarity of thought must come before clarity of expression. That by communicating, we are breaking a barrier. There was an Airtel tag, which said that barriers break when people talk. So let us talk, even if we talk about literary theories, let us try to understand something that can increase our perception of life, perception of humanity, perception of what we are doing with our life, what purpose, and justify what Socrates had said. Let us examine lives, yours, mine, everyone's, through books, through reading, through theories, but let us not allow anything to be superimposed on us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
If there are any questions or comments.
Dear participants, now you all are free to post your questions in YouTube channel chat box, please. Sir, it was really a wonderful presentation, sir. The collage which have shared with us has really given us an exclusive idea and picture of literary theory. And sir, this whole Kumbh Mela has really quenched their thirst in your knowledge flooded river of literary criticism. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta.
There are sir only compliments are coming because people are saying, participants are saying that man of later we have never listened such kind of a webinar, and informative session, insightful, very lucid and simple language for literary criticism, sir. Me
I'm
as a
glad I'm glad they are not asking who called him.
sir, me
They are
as a
not. I'm glad they're not looking for Sudhir Nikam.
sir, there is a question.
Yeah.
What's the relevance of literary theory in modern context?
Okay. The question is,
I repeat, what's the relevance of literary theory in modern context?
what would one understand by modern context? You mean the COVID? You mean the Chinese aggression? You mean the Ampan cyclone?
Yes, sir. Modern context. Yeah.
See, primarily, I will maybe I'll try and answer this question. I think it's a good observation. Basically, it is not a question of modern context or ancient context. The validity of literature requires universal context.
Yes.
What Aristotle said, many things have changed, I told you. The understanding of hamartia, who can be a ideal tragic hero, but what gives the stability to the theory is its durability. Today, even now, even if you read Birthday Party, if you read the story of All My Sons and anything for that matter, you find that what is very significant is that these issues are always relevant. They change their, if you look at a theory, if you look at, say, Birthday Party or Angry Young Man in John Osborne's play, you find that they, if you look at, what do we get that tragedy, you will still find that it gives you that feeling of catharsis. So from time of Aristotle till today, catharsis is still relevant. But if you are applying other parameters to the plays of Sophocles and Aeschylus and Euripides and others, you will find that those theories are still very relevant. They improve your perception about those books. They've sort of promote a kind of an understanding between you and it doesn't get in between. You feel that if you read Aristotle and you read Aeschylus, it won't disrupt your possibility for acquiring wisdom, knowledge, and anything. So great literature is always contextual.
Yes, sir.
And
Sir,
if
good
we are talking
evening.
about, yeah,
Hello. Sir, good
yeah,
evening. Sorry for interruption. This is Rajan Lal.
yeah,
Sir, sir, please repeat Marx's theory in one or two sentences. Actually, I am unable to get it. Please.
we are not talking about Marxist theory here. So you read
So, sir,
Mother by Maxim Gorky, you will understand what Marxist theory is.
okay,
Okay?
sir. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your deliberation on this. Uh, Dear participants, we have come to an end of our 2 days national webinar, The Contemporary Reflections on Critical Theories and Aesthetics. It's our privilege to put our sincere thanks on record to Dr. Nibir Ghosh, sir, man of letters, for his intellectual insights, which I'm sure would have been enlightening our participants. Sirs, the intellectual wisdom and knowledge loaded talk shared by you on the topic definitely have opened up new avenues to the horizons of the literary world of critical theories. Thank you very much, sir, for spending your valuable time and sharing your thoughts with us today. We must thank our yesterday's guest speaker for both the sessions, Professor A.G. Khan sir and Professor Kamal Mehta, for delivering their intellectual talk on mapping theories and aesthetics, a major challenge before the contemporary world. We also thank all the participants for your active participation. The feedback link for this 2 days webinar has been shared in YouTube channel's chat box. Kindly fill the feedback and submit it so that you will get e-participation certificate. Filling that feedback form is compulsory for to receive the certificate. I request all the participants, please fill that form again. We also thank all the organizing committee members who were working day and night to make this national webinar successful. And lastly, I wish to sincerely thank Dr. Sudhir Nikam sir and Dr. Madhavi Nikam ma'am for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be a member of this webinar. We wish you all safe, sound, and healthy life during this pandemic crisis. Happy e-learning. Thank you.